Hey everybody, welcome to another Bitwave Quick Hits where we summarize the latest and greatest in the digital asset world in 5 minutes or less, or at least we try.
We've never yet done it in 5 minutes, but you know what? It's a good way to start. It's a good goal to attain.
We keep advertising it.
Actions. Words become
Yeah.
actions.
Yeah. I think the hope is if we say it's 5 minutes, then people will stick around. Like, oh, it's only 5 minutes. Okay, maybe 10. So big news, really big news happened this week, especially if you're in accounting or finance and digital assets. Pat, what's going on this week?
Yes, I mean the big news this week is that FASB finally officially voted on the rules that have been floating around for the last, it's 6 months. At this point, I think it's about 6 months is when we did the first version of this particular quick hit 6 months ago was talking about FASB at that point, and now we're on the other side of it. So finally, they officially voted on that, and we and I think there's a few little changes here and there. I mean, I'm really excited today because I actually am not the one getting asked questions on the quick hit. I'm the one asking the questions, so I get to bring the heat over.
Yeah, we swapped roles this time.
We're mixing it up a little bit. So Trevor, start us out with the super high level, which is like 30 seconds on what the FASB kind of guidance that has been floating around for the last 6 months is, and then we'll talk about what happened today or whatever yesterday.
Yeah, totally. So, and I'll sort of do this in layman's terms, right? So what the FASB has said, and the FASB is under the SEC, they're the non-government standard setting board for all accounting in the US. And so what they said is for digital assets or crypto assets, as they call them, they should be recognized as indefinite lived intangible assets, which basically just means you have an asset. If the value of said asset goes down, you have to recognize impairment loss. And the crazy thing about impairment is that you mark the asset down, but you cannot subsequently mark it back up. So as we know, crypto is super volatile, fluctuates. I mean, we're down from a high of 60,000 something for Bitcoin. So if you've got Bitcoin on your books, you got to write it down, and it's just sitting at its lowest value, essentially. And so that got a ton of backlash from the digital asset industry because it just didn't make sense. It was like, why am I going to, have this asset that's valued at its lowest value, and we can't write it back up?
And it made sense, like historically, because A, digital assets didn't really fit in anywhere else, and then B, intangible long-lived assets as a class that you mark down makes sense because that's the things that these normally are things like domain names and goodwill and stuff like that you really, A, they're hard to value, and B, they really do only move down. They don't tend to move up. So it kind of made sense in that way, but like for everyone who's in the space, we're like, it just made everything miserable because you couldn't use it for loans. You couldn't use it for, it's the whole stack of different things about how people think about this. So, okay. So then what was the FASB rule that kind of that sort of floated up 6 months ago?
Yeah. So the FASB rule that floated up about 6 months ago was, hey, we're thinking about, the FASB is considering valuing crypto assets at fair value, which is similar to how we value, most equities, foreign currencies, and really what the industry was pushing for. So everyone got really excited, and they just said, hey, we're taking comments from industry experts. A lot of people commented, the majority of which were practitioners and preparers, which I thought was interesting, and just said, hey, we are all in favor of the fair value treatment. It makes a lot more sense. And then they also, deliberated a little bit on like the actual scope of the what's included in this. So there was some question about like, are NFTs included in this, or wrap tokens considered here?
Well, this continues to be the really hard part about this, is that they actually defined a relatively narrow scope of assets that fall under this new treatment. we've talked about this before, but it's worth re-mentioning here. Can you read the rules, or like elucidate on the rules briefly about like how they
Yeah.
carved it out?
Yeah. So this is going to take the technical language here, but the scope of this new accounting guidance, it says a crypto asset must meet the definition of an intangible asset, not represent a contract or provide enforceable rights. That one's kind of tricky. Be
That's the
created or
dicey
reside.
one.
Yeah.
Because that's the
Yeah.
one that carves out everything. Like, it carves out Aave. Like, you think about like Aave liquidity pool. You certainly cannot. I think there's a lot of gray area on this, but like there is no world where you can take a Aave liquidity pool token or a Uniswap liquidity pool token and run it through this treatment, because it absolutely
Mhm.
does have contractual rights to underlying assets and underlying movements and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is where it gets tricky. But then, Trevor,
Yeah.
did they clarify this at all, or not really?
Not really. I mean, this is really pretty narrowly focused when you look at the broad spectrum of digital assets. Um, a lot of people commented and said, "Hey, I think we should include wrap tokens." And FASB just said, "Nope, sorry, not going to include wrap tokens, not including NFTs." So it is a big win in the
The wrap
sense that,
token one is killer. The wrap token one really is killer,
yeah,
because in our experience, I would say most of our clients probably. God, we've never actually done this analysis. It'd be interesting to do if we ever want to send some comments on to the FASB, but like probably like 25 to 50% of our core coin holdings of our clients are in wrapped tokens, because they're just
yeah,
so much more useful.
yeah. I mean, I think about with just how DeFi and Ethereum ETH staking is blowing up. I mean, like thinking about Lido staked ETH. I mean, how many companies have that sitting on their balance sheet, right? And
Many. Yeah.
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 So, yeah, a bit unfortunate that that is not covered. So we might have like a bifurcated uh impairment slash fair value
Yeah.
accounting, which is fine. I mean, that's
It's
part of
gonna
why
get
we
more
exist.
complicated. It's gonna get more. It's good for us. Yeah, exactly. It's gonna get more complicated before it gets simpler. That's for sure. And but I guess so. But then, Trevor, what are the next steps here? So, does this mean that this is enforced? Like, now everyone goes in fair values, or are there still more steps that have to kind of get knocked down here?
Yeah, so the the vote was finalized, but the FASB staff will now write a final draft of the ASU, or the accounting standard update. It's anticipated that it'll be published in Q4 of this year. Who knows if that's actually going to happen? Early adoption is available right now, and they're really pushing that.
Is that
So
right?
you
Did
can,
they say that as part of this?
yeah, they're encouraging early adoption of this, but it isn't required until December 15th, 2024. So, really, 2025 is when it's going to be required, or
So,
period
because of this
starting.
vote, you're okay to do early adoption as of today, or do you really need to wait till that Q4 set of like actual the ASC itself comes out?
That's a good question. I mean, I
I'm
think,
asking the hard questions.
yeah, I think you would probably be okay now that the vote has taken place. If you really wanted to be safe, you'd wait till the accounting standard update is official.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, certainly if you are an enterprise that has digital assets on your books or deals with them in any way, reach out and we'll walk you through what the new guidance means. Uh, it makes a lot more sense to investors, and that's what uh, someone on the FASB, I have it written down here, even said. So this is Richard Jones, the board's chairman. He says, "I think we heard overwhelmingly from investors that allocate capital based on the use of financial statements, that this will provide them better information to make their decisions, and so I'm fully
Yeah.
supportive of it." So
Yeah.
I
Because
think it
that
makes a
was always
lot
the
more sense.
issue. Is it just it wasn't actually correct on the balance sheet? Like, then you ended up in this situation. This is where I always talked about this, is you end up in this situation where everyone who had digital assets on their balance sheet, public companies, all had these massive footnotes. And basically you were
Mhm.
training everyone. If you were an investor analyzing, MicroStrategy, you were training people to ignore their primary financials and look at as sort of like non-audited, or at least like, basically a tertiary set of financials and footnotes to understand the true health of the company and ignore what they were actually putting in their balance sheet, which is just so bizarre for the purposes of public accounting. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Trevor. This is it's exciting. I mean, we're all pretty happy on our side to finally have this out. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really excited. I think it makes way more sense for investors, for preparers. Um, we're excited to start implementing this. I mean, I know we already have tools to help with this, so it's really exciting for sure.
Yeah, so reach out if you're interested in this. Bitwave already supports fair value accounting, it supports impairment, and you can actually do asset by asset. So that's where we're going to see this happen. We think we're going to see a lot of people doing Bitcoin, ETH, things like that as impaired assets and everything, or I'm sorry, as fair value, and then everything else on their books, NFTs, all of that as impairment still. So it's going to be a fun few months, and so thanks so much, Trevor. I got to interview.
Yep. Yep. Good stuff. A little longer than 5 minutes, but can't break tradition.
So close. So close.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.